I know, I think the last time I said to you that I was going to look at the selecting projects strategically, but I've had a slight change of mind again. And what I'm going to start into today is the how to say the crown jewel of project management. It's earned value management. Now it's an extremely powerful tool, and it's one of those types of graphics when you have it all compiled that can tell you an awful lot about the state of a project, whether it's above or below budget, whether it's ahead or behind on schedule, and so on. And we can get indices based on the data from the earned value that will predict how the project will end if we take no actions. And it is a really, really powerful tool for project management. Most importantly, this is the core of your next assignment. You'll be delighted to know. Now, there are several versions of this on your Moodle. They're all pretty much saying the same thing. And the one I'm going to use, and we'll start this today. We won't complete it because I'm not going to keep you for a full 2 hours. It's kind of heavy going, I'm afraid to say. But we'll get so far on this one, and we'll complete it next week. But suffice it to say that it's all your second assignment is all centered around this. All centered around this. And you'll be creating the spreadsheet and using the data provided. Now, of course, I'll walk you through some of the bits and pieces as we're going along as well, just to give you a bit of guidance. So we've got this week, and then we've 3 more weeks after this, and we're into Easter. So I'll be kind of gradually winding down coming up towards Easter, and then just final recaps after Easter, if there's much to be done there. And given the how do you say, the current operating environment, that's not altogether too bad. So let me get down to our production area. Now, okay, I hope everything is still running okay, and I will bring out our PowerPoints, earned value, and enlarge them. So, earned value management. I first came across this back in the 80s, and it wasn't very, very popular back then. Again, it was when I was running projects with Ericsson, and they had very advanced techniques, as I told you before, when we were talking about the roadmap and how I'll just move out here. When I was talking about our roadmaps, and that last presentation that I gave you, again, a very important lecture. I would strongly advise going back over that one again, going onto YouTube and looking at that video again. There's so much information in that one about the Meteor process, because it's been the same type of process we've had around for 30, 40 years, and it hasn't, nor will it, change. Okay, that's the beauty about it. You can customize it, obviously, to your own types of projects, and that's also one of the beauties about that model that I showed you. It's essentially a waterfall model, if you want to put names onto these things. There are many hybrids of the waterfall model, but they all fundamentally come back to the same simple building blocks. You have a task to do. You need inputs, resources, do the task, and you end up with a deliverable or an output. Everything is broken down in that work breakdown structure into those activities, and then you link all the activities and you begin to have a project or a project plan. The next most important, as I said, element of understanding the methodology is how do we monitor and control our projects. And this earned value methodology or technique is extremely powerful in that sense. And as you see here, okay, I'll get down out of the way here. I'll go down to the bottom left. As you'll see up here by the description in the, I'll get my cursor onto it, make critical project decisions utilizing early warning signs based on the data that you currently have. Any variances and trends we can see, we can project or predict what might happen in the project if based on the data we already have gathered. And that's exactly the situation you're being evaluated on in the next assignment, where we're talking about the girl who's completed her MBA and she has to run a project, produce a TV advert or a marketing campaign or whatever it was, or a series, and she's running into some kind of problems. I introduced the problems to you. What does she do? And it's a whole chunk of text, and the whole point about that text is that there's a lot of information in there, and you have to extract out, well, what are the activities she needs to do, and then what is the sequence, and this information is given to you, and then the sequence, and then identify, well, what are these, what sequences are critical, what needs to be done first, and then the next one. So it forms your critical path. Now the critical path in any project, as I say, determines the overall duration of the project. And if you can crash the project, is the terminology used, by reducing the critical path, then all the other activities that are not on the critical path can also be reduced, and therefore you can come in ahead of schedule, or you can reduce the overall time to deliver the project. That's the whole point of project management. Excuse me. So as you're going along, you need the tools. You can't be just simply asking people, where are we at now? Are we close? Are we finished this, that, and that? You need to be able to collect data. Now, there are many sources of the data in the project. The simple conversation that I just described might be a case of collecting data. How much of that activity have you completed? I've completed 60% of it. How much time have you taken? I've used 70% of my time. I should be only using 60% of my time. Will you come in on target? Probably. So you might get that. Another way of collecting data is through people recording their time on timesheets. So to say, I'm working on this activity and I spent 4 hours, I spent 24 hours, I spent 19 hours. You might have planned 30 hours for it. So based on the fact that they've spent 20 hours on the project or on that activity, you can say that they are 66% complete. They've another 10 hours to work, and you might just check, are you going to complete this within the 30 hours? And they say, yes, definitely it'll be on target. So right now we have 20 hours done and we have 30 hours to do, and it's on target. So you as a project manager feel a little bit more relaxed. You feel a little bit more confident because the people who are working on the activities, they recorded their time and you've checked it with them, and everything seems to be running nicely. Comes the weekend, 20 hours done, and you've another 10 hours to do, and maybe that person has an accident or has out cycling. They fall off their bike and they end up in hospital. And as a consequence, who's going to finish the job? Panic. You find out on Monday morning, Marcus had a crash, he's not going to be in here, so he can't complete the final 10 hours of his activity. Can somebody take over, and blah 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 blah. So these are all the kind of things that you can you have to be able to monitor and control. Now, other ways you might have already planned that in the eventuality you have some surplus capacity elsewhere, so you might have Mark's friend who knows what Mark is doing and say, well, can you take on this additional work, and so on. And it might be a little bit late, but nevertheless it'll get done, whatever the case may be. But coming back up out of those grassroots levels, we'll go into this technique, earned value management. Now, you will see a lot of acronyms, a lot of them being thrown at you. And this is what frightens people most of the time, are seeing all these acronyms, AWS and BWPS and all this sort of stuff, and say, what in the name of God is this? Once you familiarize yourself with the acronyms and you say, well, AWS, actual work scheduled, okay. Now I know it's the actual work scheduled is done. The budgeted work completed, BWC, I budgeted €2,000 to complete this activity or these sequence of activities. So you'll begin to familiarize. It's like learning, I won't say a new language, it's not that difficult, but you, over time, reuse and reuse of the technique, you become familiar with them and it becomes second nature. And if you present one of these to an experienced project manager, they can see exactly, I see, yeah, boom, boom, boom. They read it like they read English or Chinese or whatever the case may be. So be not afraid of flying. Angels live in the clouds. The devil lives on earth. Now, what all does that mean is that you need to get the data down low, get deep and dirty. That's what we mean in the earth. You know, the devil's in, or as we used to say, the devil is in the detail. Show me the data, show me the numbers. And then we can rise up into the clouds and say, yes, everything is running nicely, and we expect things to run more smoothly. I'm just turning my phone on to silence. So we can stop all this stupidity coming through. Right. So, what are the highlights of what we're going to do? We're going to be able to see the current project challenges. So, where we are now and what challenges might lie ahead for us to complete our remaining activities. Our earned value overview, definitions, the metrics that we can produce from it, variance and management reserve. Okay, so what happens when things don't follow the actual plan? And I keep drawing this S curve because that's what I say is the baseline plan. So when you accumulate all your hours and your activities and your costs, you end up with this S curve. So if mathematically, if you have week 1, week 2, and week 3, and I need a third hand. So week 1 is here, week 2 is here, but the cumulative is week 1 plus week 2. So to date you have this amount. And then week 3, you add week 3 to week 1 and week 2, and you have week 3. So you begin to get an S curve. And based on the activities. So you're accumulating the numbers. And every time you accumulate numbers, a sequence of numbers, you will end up with this kind of S curve, generally speaking. Okay, it could be very flat or it could be very steep, depending on how big the numbers are you're adding in the sequence. But in any case, when you accumulate a sequence of numbers, you'll have an S curve. And that's what you do in the very first instance. When you go through all the project detail, all the activities, you've assigned people, you know how many hours each activity and how much hours multiplied by an hourly rate, the man-hour cost, gives you the budgeted cost or the planned cost. So you have the planned cost and the planned hours of the project. They're the two basic pieces of data. And as you accumulate those, so you have an accumulated budget and an accumulated time. Okay? And when we combine these into our graph, any variation between that, when you go off that main line, your baseline curve for your baseline project, when you go up above that or below it, you have a difference. And that difference is known as your variance. And that's where the fun begins, trying to find out, well, why are these things different? Now, this is exactly like what you would have already studied in finance, particularly in costing and budgeting. You have variances. You budget, you're going to spend €1,000. You will find that you have over a week, so that's €200 per day. And you find that by Wednesday, instead of spending €200 on Wednesday, you spend 200 on Monday, 200 on Tuesday, you're planned to spend 200 on Wednesday, That's a cumulative budget of 600, 2, 4, 600, but you actually end up spending 350. So now your budget is, what do you do? Do I only spend 50 on Thursday and 200 on Friday? Or do I spend 125 euros on Thursday and 125 euros on Friday, which means that I'm left with, I have my final 1,000, so it came in on my budget. Or you say, well, I have to spend 200 on Thursday and 200 on Friday, so now I find that my budget is gone over because you spent 350 euros on Wednesday instead of 200 euros. Now your budget you've spent in total at the end of the week 1,150 compared to what you had originally planned of 1,000 euros. Okay, do you follow those sums? Yeah. And that's, so you at the end of the week you can go back and say, well, what happened Monday and Tuesday? I was on target. On Wednesday I went off. I need to investigate, why did I spend that extra 150 euros on Wednesday? And you probably find, there was a bill or some other expense that I had not planned for or budgeted for, or my original estimation was that it was 200 euros, but it actually cost 350 euros. There was a change by the supplier or whoever's, wherever you had to spend the money, there was a change, and you can explain the variance. So now you can see, you understand why. Is it a bad thing that you came in over budget? Not necessarily, provided you can understand the variance, why that happened. But more importantly, on Wednesday, you see this new cost has come in. It's 350. I should have only spent 200. What do I do to try and recover that extra money I spent and try and come in on budget? That's it. That's this whole concept of earned value in a nutshell. That's what it means. So variance and variance management, and then we look at some examples, and then revised estimates. When we come to revised estimates, I've shown you the baseline plan. Now I'm using my fingers and drawing in the air. These are actually visible in this PowerPoint presentation later on, and you'll see what I'm talking about. We can revise, so sometimes the reason for a revised budget might be the solution that you originally came up with, planned for, has become much easier. It isn't as complicated as you originally thought. Maybe some new technology, maybe some new piece of equipment has been made available, which means you can do this work faster and more efficiently, which means you won't take as long as you had originally planned, and you can get it much more quickly, obviously, and therefore you can reduce your budget and possibly reduce your time. So you're revising downwards. Not often the case. Usually we find that we're revising our estimates upwards. So as you're getting into the project, because remember, if your project is 9 months long, you don't actually know what's going to happen in 3 months' time, or in 7 months' time, or in 5 months' time. So something can happen in your project that causes you to change and say, let's say for argument's sake that there's some wage agreement that has been approved by the company or the government or whomever, and it meant that all the basic wages go up by 2%. So now you have to say, well, I have to revise my budget and add a 2% onto my labor cost. So how this looks graphically, you'll have the original budget, and now you have the remaining work revised, so you add it to your original budget and it comes up. So the finishing point is going to be slightly higher. The labor cost will be slightly higher than your original plan, and that's a revised budget. But we trap that, and in your project note you see revised budget due to a 2% increase in labor costs. So we know why, so it makes perfect sense. And does that make you a bad project manager? Absolutely not. In actual fact, it makes you a good project manager, because you have all the answers. You know why things have happened. And that's why it's so important to have the tools for you to be able to predict change and monitor, control your whole project from start to finish, and it makes life a lot easier. And then we look at earned value criteria. So current project challenges, these are the kind of issues that you're facing. So if you look at budgeted costs of the work, quantifies the accomplishment. So we believe that when we budget these costs, we're going to spend X amount on labor and Y amount on equipment, technology, and these budgeted costs then indicate that we're going to be able to deliver this project for 15,000 euros. And that's what it means. Budgeted cost of work quantifies the accomplishment. So we're going to do all of this. Let's just say we wanted to build a cloud-based system for a company. So you have to buy servers, you have to install the hardware, the operating system, you have to install the applications, and you have to provide the communications onto the link, and then the company then has access to the cloud-based technology. So at the end of spending 15,000, which is reasonable, you have a server that's dedicated to your company. Okay, and that's the project. So that's how our budgeted costs. So if we spend 15,000, we can have cloud computing. Let's just say, for argument's sake. It also gives us a value for money. So we can physically see, if we spend 15,000, this is what we're going to get. We're going to get a cloud-based system, for example. Cost and schedule variance over time. So again, because it's real live data, and we're gathering all this data in real time, we can see if we move in, if our costs begin to increase or our schedule changes, we can see what's happening and we can investigate immediately. There's no point in waiting until something has already happened and gone wrong and not know about it, and then you're wondering, well, why does this happen? At least now you're able to do something about it. You can catch it earlier. Project status with regard to the costs and schedules, so you can, that was my last point, you can actually see where you are right now, and based on that you can predict where you might be within the next month, for the next reporting period, next week for that reporting period, or the end of the project in total. But usually we don't wait for the end to start taking corrective actions. We try to react immediately to try and bring things back on track. We can see the level of effort, how much time and resources we're putting into our project. And that can give us an idea of, are we utilizing our resources efficiently? Can we improve what we're doing? Estimated time, elapsed time. So we can see how much time of the budget has already been done, so we can predict how much time we have remaining, and will we get all our activities completed. Apportioned effort due to another work package, that can be a case of a change in the project. The customers might want to add in some new feature during the project, so we can see, well, what can that impact? So immediately that's going to spell a revised budget or a revised project, generally speaking. Are we ahead or behind schedule? So we can see from the graph, from the variance, are we on target to our original plan, or are we behind? So if our activity or schedule line is below our planned line, then we're behind by that difference. Let's see them coming up. No over or underspent. Same for so time and money. We can see that we can be behind schedule and over budget. Oftentimes that is the case. Whether the project funds are spent on the right tasks, that's not a very strong, it's a very weak argument in terms of the challenges, because usually we have the planned tasks and budget which brings us full. So these are all the challenges that all projects face, and it's how we manage them and monitor them. So if we look here at what's the earned value overview, so why and what of these earned values. So the why, provides an early warning signs for prompt actions, corrective actions, provides a uniform unit of measurement, so dollars or work hours. Okay, so we all agree we're dealing in this currency, dollars or euros, and how many work hours. That's why. So we want to track how much we're spending in money and how much time we're spending or using. Requires different measures of progress for different types of tasks. So it depends on the complexity of the task that you're trying to complete. Some are more difficult than others, might require more time. Some are more critical than others, therefore need a little bit more monitoring. Some might be more expensive. You might have to hire in consultant engineers or hire in particular expertise, and that comes at a higher cost. But you can keep a project on track, assuming they can deliver using their expertise. You might outsource some stuff. So we need to consolidate progress of many tasks into an overall project status, and that's the fundamental reason as to why we want to be able to find out what's happening at the low level, the devil on earth level, the data level. We want to find out at the lowest level what's happening, pull it all together, and we get an overview. Well, the whole project now is ahead or behind schedule, or perfectly on schedule, on target, as we say. So the what do we use? So using project management methods, practice, and process and tools. So accurate definition of defined deliverables. So we need to know, when we say defined deliverables, what precisely are the activities. If we know exactly what the activities are, then we know what the deliverables will be, and we know how many people or pieces of equipment we need to make those deliverables, carry out those activities, and how much they're going to cost us. And what was I thinking of there? Direct cost and indirect cost to the product. Like your accountancy, you will have indirect costs. So for example, if you're using a piece of equipment, you might use an advanced laser or 3D printing machine to produce particular types of components. So the direct cost would be the operating costs of that machine. But you'll also have a person that has to program it and so on. So that's another cost. And then you have depreciation, light, heat, electricity, and so on. They're indirect costs because you have to have those running to make the machine work, obviously. So you have the direct cost of the machine itself. How much does it cost? And that's usually provided by the accounting department. So most projects combine the equipment and the man hour. Okay, the human time plus the machine time. They combine it together and they call it a man hour. So for me to produce these little components, I have to use that machine, and it'll take me 15 minutes. So one component, 15 minutes on that machine. So the machine cost plus my cost for 15 minutes, that's how much it costs to produce one component. Okay, and that's often referred to as the man hour cost. The cost of me as the person and the cost of the machine. Combine the two of those. Now in very large projects, if you're building a bridge or a shopping center or something like that, then you will probably separate out these costs, but they're exactly the same. So the time for labor and the time for machines multiplied by the hourly rate. So if you have to hire equipment to build a bridge, you can break it down as to how much it's costing me per hour or per day. And same for my time, how many people and how much are you paying them, what's their salary, and this is the cost. So the total salary, including the company's contribution of taxes and so on, gives you a man hour cost. But usually in small tech projects, we combine the two of these and say it takes a man and a piece of equipment to produce this piece of deliverable. Combine these, it makes life a little bit easier. And then we have detailed tasks and activities and work not in the breakdown work breakdown structure is out of scope. So it can tell us that if there are additional activities happening that we didn't plan for, maybe there was a particular, we thought we had a solution to produce this piece of equipment, and when it came to it, it was a lot more difficult, that the machine isn't capable of producing, or the person using working the machine doesn't have the knowledge, so you have to pay for someone that's more experienced, or maybe buy or rent a new machine that has more advanced technology to allow you to be able to produce the output that you were expecting. And that's one reason. Another reason might be that for a work breakdown structure or package deliverable, another reason for that being out of scope might be that it's it wasn't originally in the requirements, and somehow or other it got in there, bad planning, for example, or the customer has changed their minds and now they want something slightly different. And then the what is the baseline of the project, of the budget control account: schedule, work measurement by the control account, hours, dollars, and unit. Okay, so we get a baseline budget. That's this famous S curve that I'm talking about. That's your roadmap for your project. So the benefits of having the earned value, I've discussed so many of them already, helps to make critical project decisions based on actual versus budget costs, the variance, the trends, and to predict future performance. So when we know how things are running up to now, we can predict how things will continue to run if we don't take any action. And that's because we use what's known as indices. Multiply a couple of variables together and it'll give us a very powerful, accurate prediction. Improves vendor customer relationships, of course, because we want to be, we don't want to turn around. For example, if you plan to offer this cloud-based system to a company and you say 15,000 euros, and then you come back at the end of the project and you say, well, actually, no, it's now costing 18,000 because we didn't think, we forgot about this and we should have used that and we didn't do that. The customer's not going to be happy. Okay, they're going to say, but you quoted me 15,000. Where is this extra 3,000 euros? Or worse again, 25,000 euros. You know, they'll be saying, this is way off. I'm not buying that. And what do? You know, or if it's running over, let's just say it is running at 18,000. Do you take the hit and say, well, I'll reduce my profits here because I need to come in at 15,000? And that's the big risk. Often that's what happens in projects. The company or the project absorbs and it eats into the profit of the project, and they're just to come in at the right quotation or at the right price. That's why it's so important when you're dealing with the customers, you invite them in at the various milestones. Toll gates, if you remember from the methodology that I showed you, I showed you these toll gates, and usually good practice, and we introduced this in the 90s. Not many companies were doing it, and still, not, yeah, they're doing it a lot now. But back then, it was unheard of to invite your customers in to see how your projects were running. But we felt that it was important so as they could see the projects were so big and so complex that inviting them in, they could see this is what you're actually spending your money on. And these are all, and every time you change your mind, these are the consequence of that. So the customers were saying, oh, we see. So we want to, if we want to introduce new requirements or onto the project, you have to do all of this additional work and so on. Exactly, we do. We have to do all this additional work, and that's why it becomes more expensive. And the customer might say, okay, we won't do this anymore. Or they might say, no problem, we'll pay for the additional work, because it's important to the customer that they have these new additional features and so on, so they're willing to pay for it. That's why it's so important having that connection with your customers, and that's why we introduced this concept of bringing in customers to see how things are going. It's like building a house. You don't want to wait till you're handed the key. If you're building the house, you like to say, oh, that's the ground and there's the walls being put on, and now, so you can see the progress. And maybe you'll talk to the builders say, can you move that door? Can you change that window before they do it? Or if they've done it already, could we change this to a slightly bigger window? And they say, yes, but it'll cost you a lot of money because we have to redo all that work. And you say, okay, but I prefer to see this window slightly bigger, and you will pay for that. That's why you have this constant partnership or relationship builder. Creates a culture of openness, trust, and honesty. That's what happens when you engage with your customers, and there's very clear communications. Everyone understands precisely what has to be done, and the customer can see the value and the cost of what they're asking you to do. And likewise, you're showing them this is why you're getting this project delivered to you, and this is why it's costing this, and so on. So they get an understanding, and ultimately you can see you have value for money. So if you were to wait until the end of the project and say, is this it? Is this what you built me in this house? Is that the server you put in place? How can that cost 15,000, or how can that house cost 250,000 euros? That doesn't make sense to me. But if you have them involved, they can see the effort going in. It's like you go to let me see. If you go to a doctor or a solicitor or an architect, and they show you something, or here's the solution, or the doctor fixes you up in 5 minutes, that yeah, that's what the problem is, go and take these tablets. You're not paying for the tablets as such, well, of course you are, or the 15 minutes. You're paying for his life's experience and knowledge to be able to diagnose what's wrong with you. That's where you're seeing the value for. If he gets it right, perfect. A couple of days later or whatever, you're feeling better, or your rashes are gone. Or you can see the house being built, and you can see that, yeah, I can see all the effort that went into building that house. I can see all the complexities in putting that server together for my cloud computing. I thought it was just a computer and that's it, no problems, and put it all together, install like I install apps on my phone. No, different world altogether. So now I can see that I'm getting value for money, and of course for the project that you're delivering value for money. Another one of the benefits, useful to make prediction based on comparative analysis. So we can compare what's happening in our existing project with other projects and say, are we on track? If this cloud computing on average costs between 15 to 20,000 euros, and we're going to come in on the lower side around 15,000 euros. So we can predict that the worst case scenario might be 20,000 euros, but we'll aim and continue to run our project for 15,000 euros. The project's final cost and delivery date with certainty. So based on what we already know, the data we collected, we can predict precisely when any change happens, when the project could end, and then we know how to take active actions to make sure it ends on the original planned date. Hopefully. That's the plan. That's the whole idea. That's the benefit of these things. But the further you get into the project, the less important that becomes. So in the early phases of the project, predicting the end of it is critical. And of course then as you're getting towards the end, you don't need to predict because you can more or less see the side. But it gives us confidence in our own abilities. That's why planning is so important in projects. Improved project performance, of course, because we know how quickly and responsive and flexible we need to be to take corrective actions to enable us to stay on target, both cost and schedule. Identifies the problem by analysing the data captured, already mentioned that, and provides info about information. It provides information about the project in terms of accomplishment as well as how much has been spent to date. So every time we want to do a progress report or a status report, we gather all this data, so we get a snapshot, we get a picture of where the project is right now and any variances and what we need to do to keep it on track, or if we're going to add additional requirements, so we can see very closely and quickly. So the more frequently you do, I'm not suggesting you do these every day, totally impractical. Would you do it every week? Depends on the project, but definitely on a monthly basis if you're running a long enough project. And certainly if there's anything that's going into 6, 10, 15 months, 2 years or whatever, you would certainly be running these on a monthly basis. We did in our day. Now, there are some criticisms of the system. It wouldn't be fair of me if I tried to promote this all as positive, which it is. But there are some criticisms. It said time required for data measurement and manipulation can be considerable. Yes, again, you need to know what data you want to collect, time spent by people, time spent by machines. Can you get that information easily enough? Well, for example, you can make an extrapolation. You don't need to have a clock on the equipment to say how long that machine was being used. So if Mark works on the machine for 1 hour 25 minutes, then you say the machine is going to be worked on for 1 hour 25 minutes. Or you might already know that Mark needs to spend 1 hour on the machine. It takes 15 minutes to set up the machine and 15 minutes to clear down the machine when I've done my task. Therefore, it's an hour and a half of machine time and an hour and a half of my time, because I have to set it up and then clear it down. It's like my lecture. I started preparing, getting all my system ready here for about 12:15. I was already doing some work earlier on this morning, but I had to fine tune a few things and make sure that everything was set up, lights, camera, action, all that sort of stuff. So it took me time, and then getting my PowerPoints just right, reviewing some of the PowerPoints because I wasn't too happy about some of the presentations, and I chose this one. So it took time that you don't see because I'm now delivering it. Okay, so setup time. So again, do we need to trap that data? If you can do it automatically, excellent. Time recording systems and so on. It's how easy, but if you have to spend a lot of time gathering data, then it might not be worth it. You might have to look for alternative ways of getting the data. But that's the big challenge. So you need, and again, all of this, for example, to produce earned values, we used to use our own time recording systems and feed them into another system, a project management system, and then we might output those as CSV files from the project management system into Excel, and then produce our figures. And that's what you'll be doing in your things. You won't be outputting, but you'll already be in Excel working out these answers. So you have the tools already there. It's just getting the data into them such that you can use it and manipulate it. You don't want to be spending a week preparing this sort of stuff. You know, if you spend a day or 2 days in a month, perfect. So quantifying and measuring work in progress can be challenging, and absolutely. I mentioned earlier on in the lecture, how much time, Mark, have you spent on that task? I'm about 60% complete. Is that accurate? Mark might be underestimating the work he's done. He might be overestimating. So the only thing you can do is look at how much time is recorded. If Mark is to take 30 hours and over 3 weeks, that's 10 hours per week, you go down at the end of week 2 and check, is everything going fine, Mark? Yeah, and I'm about 60% there and so on. You'll take the hours. 20 hours out of 30 hours, I'm 66%. I'm at 2/3 of the way through. Therefore, 2/3 of the task must be complete based on my time recording. It might not be. You might only have 50% of the activity, but Marcus spent 66% of his time on the activity. And this is where it can be a little bit of a challenge, because Mark might have taken it easy in the first week and decided, I better get this work done in the second week and the third week. So Mark's effort might go up dramatically in the third week to make sure he delivers it within the 30 hours or within 3 weeks. So that's one of the ways that you might have an anomaly in terms of quantifying work in progress. It's easy to see that work hasn't started, so there's zero progress. Or we can see when the work is complete, there's 100% progress. Job is done, we have a deliverable. That's easy, but it's in the mid-terms, mid phases. Can we accurately gather that? Again, it's how you consider it. If you assign an activity to persons, to a person, then based on their time reports, you can say, yes, they've spent 20 hours out of 30, therefore 66% of the activity is complete. So 66% of the product is built, for example. So integration of financial expenditure information into the scheduled status. I don't see why that's a criticism, and simply because I described it earlier on, if you know how many hours are being spent on the project, you know the people who are being assigned the tasks, then you know how much you're paying those people. So for in terms of their salary, then you can say, how much is it costing me to have Mark working on my project per hour? So divide his salary by, I think the average is around 1,600 hours is your allocation for the year. So you have 52 weeks, we say 48 weeks working, divide that by his into his salary, and therefore you can get his cost per hour of having Mark. That's his salary, and then how much does the company pay? So we get a cost, total cost of employing Mark and paying him at an hourly rate. And that's how we get it, and we get that from the finance department. So once we have that, it's generally the same. So for example, when I worked in Ericsson, we had two different hourly rates. £45, which would be, I don't know, would have been about 70, 60 euros per hour was the man-hour cost, generally speaking. Then it went up to £60, which would have pushed it up to maybe 80, 90 euros. It depends. It could be 150 euros man-hour cost, and that will say, well, that's the whole cost of having a person on this premises with all the light, heat, insurance, security, wages, salaries, pension, all those costs divided in to that person, and this is what the organizational man-hour cost is. Companies change it. For example, another way of explaining this would be, if you look at the solicitors or lawyers or architects or some financial services, all those big companies, they're all consultants, essentially. They bill you an hourly rate. So you could be hiring me to work as a consultant for your company, and I'd be charging you 250 to 500 euros per hour. If you were working with KPMG or PwC or McKinsey, all these big consultancies, KPMG, they would be billing their clients. They'd be billing me out at maybe 2,000 euros per day. Do I get that as my salary? Absolutely not. If I was getting 200 euros per day, I would be doing well in those big organizations, maybe 300 euros per day, maybe a bit more. But I wouldn't be getting 2,000. That's what they bill it out for. So we can get all this information, so we can pull this into what's known as our man-hour cost. It's a simple way of breaking it all down, and we know how we made up the man-hour cost. You talk to the accounting, well, what's included? These are all the costs of having one person employed to do their work in this company. So a note being, adhere to project management best practices, of course. Baseline your schedule, and that's your basic plan. And how many activities, get your agreed project plan in place. That's your baseline. That's what we call this S-curve. Activities that need to be done accumulated over the total duration. So when we've done all the detailed planning, worked out our critical path, all the activities, we put them all together, we get a baseline plan. That's your starting point. And it's when you have that baseline plan, you say, right, now we're ready to go with this project. Analyze variance from your expectations. So obviously being able to identify what goes wrong or has gone wrong and how can we correct it. Diligently update your schedule and your expenditure. That's why I say you might not do this weekly, but certainly monthly. So keeping the information up to date, as fresh as possible so you can keep on track. So if you don't have the data, then you won't be able to predict what's going to happen. Understand work products produced by the project, and what that means is what the actual activities, these are work products or the work breakdown structures, the outputs, the deliverables, to use the correct terminology. So people do something, they use machineries, they produce something. It could be 10 lines of code, it could be a new piece of equipment, or it could be a component. They're outputs, they're deliverables. So when you know what's going on in your project, organize your estimation and schedule around work products. So you can clearly identify. So if you're building a house, you can see that the work product, the first work product, is getting the foundations in. There's a lot of work to be done, but you get the basic foundation in. That's a work product. The next product might be, or part of the deliverable, might be the walls in your house, and then the roof, and then you have all these other activities going on simultaneously. Now we have the roof on, we have all the plastering, we have all the electrical and plumbing all done, and so on. These are all products, so we can say, is the plumbing complete? Yes. Here's water running. Is the heating system working? Yes. These are all deliverables in parallel, but at least we can schedule the work. Do not re-baseline unless there is formal approved change in scope. I should have written this in complete red, large letters, underlined, bold and italics. That last statement here. Unless you have some mechanism to say that the client has changed their mind, they want to add more windows into the house, they want to add 2 computers onto their cloud system, and unless you have that formally documented, then do not change your plan, and that has to be agreed. Any changes have to be agreed, and the mechanism we use for that is what's known as a change request. So a change request comes in, you have to evaluate it. It's like running a little mini project. And that little mini project, you evaluate, what's the change? How much work does it involve? Is there rework? Have we to undo some of our work already? And if we have to undo some of this work, how long does it take to catch up, and how much is this going to cost us? And if you get it and say, this is going to cost you additional money and take additional time, you can go to your client or your customer and say, you want to introduce this new change at this point. We've evaluated the change request. This is what are the consequences. Our investigation or analysis has shown it's going to cost you 7% more onto your project, and it's going to take an extra 5 days or 10 weeks or whatever, depending on the size of the change. And the customer says, okay, I'll pay for it. So now you change your baseline because you have additional work over a longer period of time, and you change your baseline. That's the only criteria that you will change your baseline plan. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. There is the other side of it, where you can change your baseline plan and reduce. So the customer might say, I need to get this project out a month earlier. What can we do? And you might say, well, we can remove some of these requirements. We haven't done them yet, therefore we can remove them and reschedule, and that might help you. So you can come in ahead of before your original project plan. You can reduce the time taken and the cost by removing objects or deliverables or functionality out of your project plan. And the customer say, yeah, I'm happy. So you might have to agree on what functions or what requirements you want to have removed with the customer. And they said, well, no, we can't take that one up. That's critical for us. But this one is nice to have, but we don't actually need it. So we can remove that one and say, well, okay, that will save you that much time and money. But it's not enough. You want a month, we can only save maybe a week and a half here. So what else can go? And you might look at some of the remaining deliverables to see which can be taken out and so on. That's another way of coming downwards. So you're going to come in under the budget and ahead of time because you remove stuff. That's why this mechanism of change request is so important. Now, folks, I know we've been here about an hour, so a lot of covered. Let's take a 7 minutes break. Okay, so it's now 3 minutes to two. 5 minutes past two, we'll come back and we'll continue on the next part of that. Are you all happy with that?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So a 7 minute break, 5 minutes past two. We'll see you then, folks. Okay, folks, I'm back again. Now, just wanted to recap something here. And I'll get bigger. Now, just a reminder, you have your next assignment due on the 29th of March. That's your next individual assignment. And that's titled Monitoring and Control of Meteor Communications. Last week's lecture provides all the information, basically, of what you need for that assignment. Okay? So how I would go about that assignment would be to describe what is meant by monitoring and controlling projects, the theoretical stuff. And then I'd go into the presentation I gave you and the process, the type of waterfall model that I showed you, the toll gates, the milestones, and all of that stuff. And I talk about that's how we monitor and control. You could make reference to earned value management as a methodology to help you monitor and control projects, but not critical, because that comes up in the next assignment. So the group assignment, the Lemming TV case study, that's all about this. It's all about, so you have your waterfall model, and now you put these mechanisms in place. So you for phases of your projects, your milestones and your activities, you compile all of those into your baseline, and now we in the case study we try and plan the project more efficiently, and we put in a few criteria. If something goes wrong here, what happens if this doesn't happen, and blah 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 blah. So all those constraints are put in the descriptor of the module. So last week's presentation in particular gives you all the information you need for the next assignment on Meteor Communications. And that's why I used it. And that's due on the 29th of March. And the final project or assessment, the group work, that uses all of this material. Okay? So I just wanted to clarify that and give you the guidance to make life a little bit easier. Are we all happy with that?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
good. That's happy enough. Let me go down to the bottom left again. So I'll continue with this. We talked about the change requests and being the mechanism to allow you to add or subtract stuff from the project. Okay, now let's start at these definitions. What you have is the planned value, the actual cost, and the earned value. Okay, so the planned value, planned expenditure cash flows based on the completion of tasks in accordance with the project's budget and schedule. So planned cost of works, a total amount of work scheduled to be performed by milestone dates. So over the period of time, this is what I've planned. I planned all these activities on over different weeks, add them all together. These activities, multiply them by the man-hour cost, and that gives us our budget and our schedule. So this project has to be finished in 4 months' time. Do all these activities, multiply them, and it'll cost us €150,000. That's your planned value. I'm expecting at the cost of €150,000 in 4 months' time to have produced this house. Okay, the actual costs, expenses based on completed tasks. So after 1 month and 2 weeks, 6 weeks into the project, I can see how much I've spent already and how much, what work has been done. That's done. It's complete, and this is, and you can't change it. It's done. Okay, that's the actual cost. So you go in and say, well, what's been done? Show me the data, show me their time reports, show me your clock cards, all that. Pull all the information together, or the data together, and you can say, this is how much after 6 weeks on this project we've done. And the earned value is the amount of the budget that should have been spent for a given amount of work completed. So we would say at when we take our snapshot in 6 weeks time, we can say that we've earned this much of the work. So we're 1/3 of the way through. We have the foundations in on our house. Everything is in place. So that would indicate, so the planned, not actual cost, complete the work that has been done. So it's how much work of the plan have we, so we're on schedule or behind schedule, whatever. But this is what we should have been at on week 6. That's the earned value. We had planned to earn or to spend this amount to earn this value. And then we have this how much was planned to have been accomplished at a given point in time. That's our planned value. How much was actually spent, and then how much value, person hours and equipment, man hours, in terms of base budget of what has been accomplished at the given point in time. So in 6 weeks we look at our base value, our planned value figure, and that is our earned. Anything done on that at this point in time, we know we've done this amount of work. That's our earned value, which might be, what do I say, let's just say of the 150,000, it's 30,000 euros worth. That's how much we've earned of the project according to our plan. We've completed these activities on this date. According to our plan, we should have earned 30,000 euros worth of value, work completed. So what is the total project expected to cost? So the estimate at completion, EAC, or revised estimate, latest revised estimate, LRE. So the estimated cost at completion equals the actual cost plus the estimated cost. So if we have slightly overspent our budget in 6 weeks, let's say we've spent 33,000 euros, and we plan to have only spent 30,000 euros. Then the reality of it is that the 30,000 from 150. 150 was the total number. We've done 30,000. We've earned value of 30,000. Therefore, technically, we have 120,000 euros worth of work to complete the project. But we've already spent 33,000. So in reality, 33,000 plus the remaining 120,000 gives us 153,000. That's what that figures out. Our estimated actual cost will be 153,000 euros, not 150 as we planned. Okay. So what is the expected completion of the project? And that's the expected completion. And then what is the expected under or overspend? So the variance at completion. So the variance at completion is 3,000 euros. The planned value was 150,000 euros. Based on how much we've spent so far, plus the remaining that we plan to do, is 153,000. So the variance at completion is 3,000 euros. So already we can see that we're going above budget. So like any good project manager say, well, how can I cut this back? Maybe I can buy some materials in the next month at a lower price. Maybe I can speed up the work and get more done by my staff to give me more output for the same time they're going to spend, so improve the efficiency, therefore you're going to save money and so on. So the variance at completion, the VAC, equals the budget at completion minus the estimate. So the budget, what you originally budgeted, minus the new estimate, adding what's actually done plus what's remaining to be done, planned. So what was the project supposed to cost is the budget cost at completion. That was the original. That's your golden diagram, that important diagram, your planned value or your budget at completion. This is that S curve. That's the backbone of your project. And here you have it represented. All my hand moving efforts are now in this picture here. And as you can see, the green dotted line, this one going up here, that was what you originally planned. And about a little over halfway through the project, you took a snapshot, and you can see that my actual cost, what has actually been spent to date, is up here. I had budgeted for this amount, so I have a variance. I've overspent based on my budget. And down here, earned value of costs of what's been accomplished to date per the base plan. So based on, at this point, I might say, well, I haven't got all my activities complete. So the activities that are only completed, I should have had more. Therefore, I've undervalued. In other words, I've only earned less value. So activities down here, costs up here. So I can see that I should have had more activities done. I've overspent and I've underachieved. Okay? And that's what this is why this is so critical now. That's exaggerated, that kind of graph. So as I can say, you're over budget and you're behind schedule. That's what these mean. Okay, that's critical to take your time and understand these diagrams. But as you can see, by just looking at that as a project manager, it tells you so much. It gives you so much information, and they're always represented like that, cost and time. And they will always see at a glance, quick glance, if you're on schedule and what the likely outcome. And the senior managers, when you present it to the project champions or the backers of your project, the investors or the customers, clients, when you present that to them, say, God, Mark, this is behind and it's over budget. What needs to be done? Can you bring it in on budget? Yes, we've got another, about a third of the time left. We can plan to do this, and we can change this, we can do that, and so on, and bring it back on schedule or close to it. So they don't get a fright at the end of it and see, oh, your costs are up here and you're not complete, so you're going to take more time to finish the project, so it's going to run over time and over budget. So you can predict all of this much earlier on in the project and take corrective action. That's the whole point. So the metrics, the cost variance metrics, so the difference between a task's estimated cost and its actual cost. Okay? And that's the calculation. So the cost variance is the estimated value minus the actual cost, or the budgeted cost of work performed minus the actual cost of work performed. Okay? Just different ways of saying the same thing. So earned value is the same thing as the budgeted cost of work performed. Actual cost is the actual cost of the work performed. Okay? That's why I said that these acronyms and so on become, they can just overwhelm you. They're not confusing, they can just overwhelm, particularly when you're seeing them for the first time. So a negative value, or over budget, and or behind schedule, or vice versa. Okay, these can have the negative values. And a deviation, any deviation from the budget, not a measure of work actual scheduled versus the work completed. So when you have any of these deviations from the original budget, you don't have all the tasks completed, and you've gone over your budget. They're the indicators. And that's the cost variance indicator. And then you have the cost performance index. So the percentage of work completed per dollar spent is the earned value divided by the actual cost, or the budgeted cost of work performed divided by the actual cost of work performed, gives you a cost performance index. So if the ratio is greater than 1, I always remember it like that, that's right for greater, left for less. Okay, I don't know if you remember these things going to school, but take on left is for less. In this case, it's greater than. So ratio greater than 1, then you're ahead of schedule and or under budget. Exceptional performance minus vice versa. So if it's greater than 1, you're ahead, and if it's less than 1, you can be behind schedule. Okay, so that's how that index works. Looking at this one, you have the schedule variance. So cost variance, schedule variance. And that's the difference between the earned value minus the planned value, or the budgeted cost of work performed over the budgeted cost of work scheduled. So a negative variance means that the project is behind schedule. So deviations from work planned, not a measure of changes in cost. Okay. Schedule performance indicator, or SPI, is the ratio of work performed to the work scheduled. So the budgeted cost of work performed divided by the budgeted cost of work scheduled. Okay, that's how you get the ratio. Greater than 1, you're ahead of schedule. Less than 1, you're behind schedule. Okay, so 1 is the holy grail. If it's equal to 1, you're perfectly on schedule. Same and previously up here, if the ratio is equal to 1, then you're perfectly on cost. The actual cost is perfectly on budget. So, what do we do with that? Earned value metrics. So minimum funds needed, if anything, to not get worse. So minimum funds equals the original total budget divided by the cost performance index. So if your original budget was 150,000, and let's just say your cost performance index comes in at less than 1, 0.95. I don't have a calculator handy. So your earned value metric will show you that you will have 150,000 divided by 0.95 will show you the final cost. What's that? About 156, 157,000. I'm not great at mental maths. I am actually, but I can't remember. So you have right now, 6 weeks into a 4-month project, which should have cost me 150,000 euros. My cost performance index shows me that I'm over budget, and the index is 0.95 or 95%. So if I keep going at the moment, by the due date in 4 months' time, I will have to spend a further 5% on top of my original cost to get all the work done, if I look at it purely from a cost. So it'll give you an idea of the funds needed if things continue to get worse and the same level of slippage. So the funds needed equals the original budget divided by the cost performance multiplied by the schedule performance. And that'll give you an overall prediction of how much work and value will have been produced by 4 months if you don't take any corrective action. So earned value variance and management reserve. Here we have the a variance of the schedule variance and the cost variance. So if you look at this one here, this was the original baseline plan, or the planned value, if you want to look at it that way. This was the original plan or schedule. And here we have the actual cost and we have the earned value. And this from here down to here shows you, because you haven't completed all the tasks, in other words, you haven't earned the value, there's still tasks remaining, you have a schedule variance. So more things should have been done by then, but they weren't. Someone could have gotten sick. Some machinery could have broken down. So you're behind schedule. And the total cost variance is the two of these. So you're over budget and you have incomplete work. Okay, that's your total cost variance. So what's the problem that causes the variance? Why is the impact on other efforts, or what is the impact on other efforts? If there is any impact, it could be simply that you the people that you wanted to work on these other tasks can't do these now because our people are waiting around. Let's just say that if the walls weren't built in your house by week 7, and you have the roofing people coming in on week 7, Monday morning of week 7. These guys arrive on site, and the walls aren't complete. There's still another 2 days work to finish the last parts of the walls. Therefore, you have those guys standing around doing nothing for 2 days, the roofers. And you're also having to pay the block layers an additional 2 days work to finish out what they should have done the previous week. So that's why people's schedule has slipped, and also the cost has gone up. Right? So can you recover? If the roofers say, well, we need 2.5 weeks, and if they say, well, if we work a little bit harder, we could come back on schedule and do it within the original 2 weeks, and so you bring it back on schedule. But they might say that means we have to come in on Saturday and Sunday, so it's going to go over on your, it's going to be an additional cost. But you will recover some of that, okay, some of it. So you're going to go over budget, but you can still remain on schedule if these guys, if you're willing to pay for it. If you're willing to pay for it, because it'll reduce the profit of your project. That's a decision that the project manager and the team and the champion or owners of the project have to agree on. So what corrective action is planned or underway? So that's basically what I've just described. What is the impact on time and cost and performance if we don't take any corrective action? And if we do take these corrective actions, or we might choose to take alternative correction. So we'll investigate what's the best way to try and bring this back, and what are the expected results of the corrective action. So can we reduce time? Can we reduce cost if we speed things up? And then the whole question of quality might come into question. If you rush things just to bring it back on schedule, could you be jeopardizing quality? That's why we do all these analyses. That's why we look at and we plan and monitor and control so tightly our projects, such that we can see the impacts of decisions that we make. So variances depend on the estimate type, the life cycle phase, the length of the project, the accuracy of the estimate, and the length of the life cycle phase itself. Now, all that means is that the estimate type, was it did you build in any fat, as we call it, some leeway? So let's just say I was scheduled to build a server, and it was to take me 3 weeks. That's 5 working days. And let's just say, well, just in case something goes wrong, let's put in an extra 3 days. Okay, so I have what did I say? 3 weeks, 15 working days plus an extra 3. So I have headroom of 3 extra days. And best case situation, I might finish it in 2.5 weeks. So I save maybe 2.5 days. So I have a bit of swing. And we always build in that kind of element into our projects, a little bit of headroom, as we call it, such that if things go wrong, then we know that the next sequence of tasks can start a little bit earlier or a little bit later, and we'll gain the time gradually. Okay, so having those kind of estimates in there, and of course, if it's in the early phase of the project, you do have more time, so the length of the project is critical. Remember, I was saying if it's only a matter of weeks, you wouldn't do a lot of this. If it's months or years, most certainly do it, because I can cite one of our most famous projects currently in Ireland is our Children's Hospital. What originally, from memory, was supposed to cost 600 million euros is now going to cost probably somewhere in the region of 2.5 billion euros. Okay, which is pushing on 4 times the original estimate cost. They say things, and you'd have to ask the question, who's project managing that? Well, certainly if they were working for me, I would have fired them. Anyway, that's just me for getting it so wrong. But in any case, that's the unfortunate thing about it. So the length of a project is all the more reason why you need to use these tools and use them effectively. And the accuracy of the estimates. So when someone tells you, yeah, if I say to you, it'll probably take me 3 weeks, it might only take me a week. It might take me 4 weeks. So how accurate, and that's why you need to have someone to help you in your planning phase that technically knows precisely what's going on. Say, Mark has been a bit generous. If he said 4 weeks, he's been too generous. He's not working hard enough. He could actually do that in 3 weeks, maybe 2.5 weeks. If he's in, or the person might say, Mark is estimating to do that in a week and a half. There is no way possible. There's too much this, and this has to be done. So it's really going to take him 2 weeks at minimum, not 1.5 weeks. So getting those estimates right and asking the right people and asking the right questions are important, the accuracy. And the length of the phase, so if you're in the design phase, which is usually the longer phase of the project, when you're actually physically executing, you have the planning phase and you have the execution and then you have the delivery, 3 basic phases. They're usually a bit more, but anyway, 2 or 3 more phases. But they're the basics of the project: a start, a middle, and an end. Okay, so the execution might be the longest phase, even though on the graph it'll look very short, but it can be long because there's so many activities going on. The reason why it looks so long at the start is because there's so few activities. It's all planning and it's only a few people, and therefore your costs are slowly going up. When you get into the execution, they start to go up rapidly, but there's a lot more things happening in that period of time. So the padding added to the project for unexpected costs are within the project scope. So not an allowance for changes to scope, not part of the cost estimate. So as we say, we put in this additional padding or headroom just in case something could go wrong, and that's why we look at this management reserve. So it's not part of the estimate, the cost estimate. We don't factor, well, usually we do, to be honest with you. So we have the worst case scenario, best case scenario, and then the expected scenario, and using the swing plus or minus 10% or maybe 5% overall. So added by upper management, not the project manager himself. So these additional reserves, so the company might say, well, just in case, we'll put a 10% extra budget available just in case the project. So we put a reserve in place, a contingency plan. If something goes wrong with Mark's project, then we have another reserve of money to bail out the project. So an example, and we'll try and rip through this. How we doing time-wise? We're getting there. Actually, this is pacing. I'll fly through this because I've been talking examples. So a project budget was expected to be $40,000. The schedule was 4 months. The tasks equal 20 things had to be done, 20 activities, evenly divided over the 4 months. So 5 tasks per month at a cost of €2,000 per task. Okay? Follow these because this is very close to your assignment. The planned value or the budgeted cost of work scheduled equals $10,000 per month. Clear, simple maths. 5 tasks by 2,000 per task, €10,000 or dollars per month. So at the end of the first month, we have a payment of an invoice of 8,000. So the actual cost or the actual cost of work performed is 8,000. We should have spent 10,000. We've only spent 8. So work completed on the first month, there was 3 tasks done costing €8,000 against 6,000. So we knew that each task we originally budgeted for €2,000 each. 5 tasks, 3,000, €2,000 each, €10,000. But we actually completed only 3 tasks, and it cost us 8,000, and not the original 6,000 that we should have spent. So the earned value is 6,000 because that's all we've completed. We didn't complete. We only completed 3 tasks. So that's the earned value, the budgeted cost of work performed, or the earned value. So those 3 elements are done, and each one costs 2,000, hence 6,000. So now you see how it's beginning to shape up. So look at the comparisons. The planned variance, the planned value the actual cost and the earned value. So we had planned 10,000 euros or dollars worth of work for 5 tasks. We invoiced only 8,000, and we know that there was only 3 tasks performed. So 6,000, 8,000 and 10,000. Now look what's happened. So we can see that the planned value, the budget cost of work scheduled 1 month, was 1,000 euros scheduled. So the schedule divided by the budget to do 10,000 work, 5 tasks, that's budget cost of work scheduled was 10,000 per month. So there is a misprint there. That should be 10,000. Okay, watch out for that. There's a mistake in the chart. That should be 10,000. I'm reading that correctly. Yeah. So we have the earned value divided by the budget cost of work. So that was the 6,000. And we have 4,000 that should have been done. Give us 10,000. So we only got 6,000 done, and there's still $4,000 worth of work to be done. So scheduled slippage permits only 3 tasks work to be performed. So the budgeted cost of work performed equals 6,000. So the scheduled variance is 4,000. So we know that each task costs 2,000. So we know we're behind by 2 tasks for that month. So the actual cost and divided by the actual cost of work performed, we have 8,000 is how much we spent. We should have spent 10,000, but we spent 8,000. So the actual cost of work performed equals 8,000. The actual cost of work performed is 8,000, and actual cost of variance is 2,000. So we've only 3 tasks with a value of 6,000. It cost us 8,000, and so we're behind. We're overspent, and we're behind schedule. So the EV example utilizing the revised estimates. So if we look at these revised estimates, so the total budget cost of cost 5,000. Work scheduled, the planned value was 2,000, and then the work accomplished earned value was 1,800, and then the actual cost is 2,400. So the latest revised cost is 5,600. So the total cost to complete the cost performance index, the CPI, the earned value divided by the actual cost. So this is a different example now. Earned value divided by the actual earned value divided by is 0.75. So that tells us that the costs were below. It's below 1, which means it's negative. In other words, it's a bad picture. We should have had 1. We're only 0.75. So it's going to cost us more to finish out. So work remaining is the budget cost divided by, or minus the earned value, budgeted actual cost divided by the earned value, minus the earned value divided by the budget remaining cost. Okay, actual cost, budget actual cost minus the actual cost, and put those numbers in here, and we have 1.23, which means that we have a cost performance index which is above 1, greater than 1, which means that we have spent more than we should have actually spent. So if you look at these, the remaining estimates, what's the least remaining estimates? So the work remaining divided by the estimate remaining. So we've 1,000 minus that over, or sorry, 5,000 of that minus 1,800 by that equals 1. So we can see based on the latest revised estimate, 5,600 dollars, the project will come in on budget at that. So the revised estimate appears reasonable. So we can basically say that if we continue as is, we could recover this and come in on schedule. Could. So earned value success criteria. so the organization, this is just moving on. We're nearly finished, folks, so stay with me. There's only 2 slides left. Organization, so detailed work breakdown structures and original budgeted schedule are prepared. We use the RASCI chart, which is basically a review of all systems and indices, schedule and cost indices. Integrate that with the organizational breakdown structures, and provide information to finance, and so on down. So the organization responsible for overhead control. That's the company, the management, the senior management, so they can see what's been spent on their projects. They get a cost from finance based on the details that you've given them. So a budget and schedule, so detailed schedules include interdependencies and milestones. So if you have projects that are dependent on one another, so people become free in one part of a project, are free to go to another project in another area, and so on. So you can get an overall holistic view. That's all this is really saying. So you have the accounts and finance. You can see your scheduling of people, performance measures, for example, baseline management reserve, and undistributed or distributed budget maintained. So we can see that the reserve is either used or isn't used, and so on. So direct and indirect costs are calculated. Costs elements, including coding, are in line with the organization's accounting system. The coding we're talking about there is that we're all using the same terminology. That what I say inside my project, that deliverable is a package, and in accounting we say that package has a cost, so they understand the terminologies between the two parts of the organization. That can be a bit tricky at times. And then of course then the earned value management and reporting. So management reports highlight schedule, cost, performance, actual versus budget variances, and the reasons. And then it visualizes these systems, and we produce the charts. So when we were producing our project status reports, and we gathered all the data as a project manager, and we went and we talked to our team and said everyone's happy or not, and this is the current state of the project. We produced these graphs so we could see any variance, and then we gave 3 major items and 3 minor items. We didn't write big long reports. We said, well, these are the 3 critical items that we need to look at to bring it back online, and these are 3 minor. And how we defined those was that if we needed management intervention, if we needed senior manager or the project sponsors, we need your help, we need more budget, we need more people, we need more equipment that we can't get ourselves in the project. Can you help us? They were the criteria where we needed outside support. Minor issues we handled internally. Maybe we get some people to work a little bit harder, maybe we get some people to do a bit of overtime. We can approve that within the project. So these are the minor issues that we can address and do something about within the project team. It worked for us, and it worked extremely effectively. There was no point in producing 20 and 30 major issues and 10 and 15, 20 minor issues, because it becomes overwhelming. You know, you have to have, common sense has to play a part in this as well. So what are the top 3 critical? It's like doing your SWOT analysis. And I always say this to students, when you do your SWOT analysis, don't be listing out 10, 15, 20 strengths and, you know, 9, 10 or 30 weaknesses and, you know, 15 opportunities and 25 threats. Why? Because you have to go in and analyze all of those in each of those quadrants and say, well, what are the real issues? You have to prioritize them. So the more of them you have, it'll take you more and more time to prioritize and get agreement amongst the team. So narrow it down. I always say, well, if you're doing a SWOT, you know, 3, 5 issues in strengths and weaknesses and opportunities is sufficient, bullet points. And then at least now we can do something. And I always call them actionable points. Okay, things that you can do something about. And then we're nearly there. So these great essentials to achieve anything worthwhile are: first, hard work; second, stick to itiveness. Stick to itiveness. In other words, stick with it, perseverance, and third, common sense. Okay, so the hard work, perseverance. Since I'm having difficulty in saying that, stick to item. Oh jeez, I can't. Anyway, stick to the plan. Perseverance, and finally, common sense. What you can and can't do, and recognizing abilities and so on. And then, lastly, good luck. That's all there is to. Now, folks, hang on a second. Now, I'll just wind these down and come back to the main page. So, that's it. That's it, folks. There is a lot in there, and you're going to need some time to go back over and digest that. There are, in some of the other presentations, there are other examples, and they're all using, they might have slightly different ways of explaining or using some of the terminology, and some of there's the one, if I can just dig this up, bear with me for a moment. One of the earned value, the one called CSE 4316. CSE 4316 earned value. That PowerPoint presentation has other examples inside there, and then there's the one from NCMA, again has other examples, but it also brings in the Microsoft project type approach, and I might bring that in next week. I might just recap, spend a little bit of time on this topic again next week, just to go through one or two of the other examples, and then you have absolutely everything that you need to complete the group assignment. So I won't meet you Thursday, and two reasons. Again, I want you to let you work on that, on your second assignment, and I'm also getting some technicians in to change some of my system. I've boosted my system here, and it's not giving me the new performance that I should be getting on it, and my system may be down on Thursday, which is a bit of an annoyance. But in any case, you have enough to keep you going, and seriously, go on to YouTube, revisit this video and last week's video, because they're really critical for you on these two assignments. Okay, folks, I'll finish on that, and we'll see you next week. And by the way, get out and get some walking done, get some exercise as well, very important. Okay, right, folks, we'll see you next week. Talk to you then. Bye bye.